Okay, a few philosophy. Here's the Hindu view of life. This is by, I don't know, Radhakrishnan. I don't, no idea who that is. But I've been wondering whether there was a Hindu Bible, and I think there is, but now I have no idea what it's called. But I have many of the Bibles, so. But I'm curious about the Hindu view of life. It's a pretty good way to put it. The kind of the old. Apparently, they have like a polytheistic. They have many gods that they worship, but apparently they think of them as one. I don't know if that's a influence of monotheist civilizations, but I'm just kind of curious in what their what's going on with them. Here's a few. Maybe I'll do those last. Okay, here is. This is free, or I certainly wouldn't have bought it. This is Caring, a Feminine Approach to Ethics and Moral Education. So, if you're at all, this is Nell Noddings. Nell Noddings is not an unknown name in feminist philosophy. This is 84, 86. You may know that feminist philosophy attempts to ascribe a unique epistemology to women and men. And so this is also, I assume it just accepts all that, and then attempts to justify a feminine, so not a masculine, a feminine epistemology towards ethics and moral education. So just as in a typical traditional philosophy structure, where unless you are a postmodernist, where your metaphysics and your epistemology generate your ethics. If you're a postmodernist, then you can talk about ethics without any notion of this world or the nature of human beings. The feminist epistemology will take the feminine epistemology and ascribe it to ethics. And so caring is now the ethical concept that they're going to use. And so I'm kind of curious on how they argue for it. Here is Whitehead. He's wrote a bit in philosophy. Adventures of Ideas, a brilliant history of mankind's great thoughts. That's great. I love those kinds of books. Tour, kind of like Bertrand Russell's A History of Philosophy. And Will Durant. What's it called? Will Durant. That's The Story of Philosophy. Those books are great. So this is another one I'll put right beside Will Durant. So here's a tough one. So if you have a library and you've got science and you've got philosophy, and then you get a book like this, Science and Philosophy by Pfeiffer, I guess. I don't know. I guess that's it. It says Dialogues on Fundamental Questions of Philosophy and Science. So this is kind of annoying, but I do have history of science books, so I'm going to have a little shelf in science of the history of science. But what do you do about philosophy and science? I need now a philosophy of science section, which I guess I may have some other books on philosophy of science. I don't know what I'll do with this, but I'll worry about that probably in about an hour. I'll be trying to figure out what to do with this one when I put all this stuff on the shelf. But it's got stuff in here about cognition, which is important, ethical problems. So I'll be curious to flip through this. All right, here's one I didn't have from the Dark Ages. Here's the what is it called? City of God? Yeah, City of God by Saint Augustine. His works, his philosophy, which is mostly like I was saying was it the previous video? Oh no, was it this video? Whatever the video I talked about the prejudices of metaphysics, discussing your world not looking at the world whatsoever, keeping your eyes closed, coming up with this rationalist theory of a preconceived metaphysics that there's a God out there and he created the world and he has a purpose for you and all this other stuff. All this stuff is a priori, no facts, no looking at the world. It's all in your head. Then make the world conform to all that. So that's going to be St. Augustine. But I figured it was worth having just so I can flip through it. And so I have this kind of piece. I've got this book now, and it's not missing. It's not, don't have a big gap. But I expect to find, I know what's going to be in here. But it talks a bit about Rome, I guess. Rome. Okay, the last couple books are Ayn Rand books. I got this one for free from Free Objectivist books. Understanding Objectivism. This is actually pretty awesome. I probably have said this before, but one of the main problems I've had with Objectivism is understanding it not as dogma, but as another account as compared to other accounts like Plato versus Rand, Aristotle versus Rand, Descartes versus Rand, Kant versus Rand, all that. Rather than reading Objectivism as if it was a Bible, you just had to accept it all and it's all the truth and that's it. I can't do that. I can't do that with any book. I have to be able to compare it when I'm reading it. So you have this theory of epistemology or theory of concept formation. Okay, great. I read it, and that's wonderful, but how is it compared to something else? And then if I can compare it to something, if I have examples, then I can judge it. Otherwise, I can't judge it. I would have to just swallow it, and I can't do that. That would be dishonest. Anyway, this is a great book because Peikoff, this is written by Peikoff. This is actually lectures of Peikoff, putting in book form and edited by one of the guys, Berliner. Peikoff does it. He actually does rationalism versus objectivism, subjectivism versus objectivism, and other ones too. I'm almost finished, so it's been pretty great. I remember the first couple chapters weren't that great. The role of philosophy was good, but I think the honesty one I skipped. But the last bit's been great. Hierarchy of objectivism, and then rationalism and empiricism. All of that is great. Lots of notes I wrote in here about that. So I'm glad for this. This was great. This is a book for understanding objectivism because you can see it compared to other things. Here's an old one. This is written by Nathaniel Branden before the big breakup. I actually read this a couple years ago. The library had it. My university library had it. This is also a nice kind of, if you don't know who Ayn Rand is, then this gives you it gives you the good stuff from all her works up to that point. So it gives you stuff from the Fountainhead, gives you stuff from the Atlas Shrugged. And there's also stuff in here about psychology, objectivism and psychology. I guess Nathaniel, I don't know if this is correct or not, Nathaniel Branden was part of the self-esteem movement in psychology, and he had his own institute, and I guess he was a big figure, although the funny thing is, all the psychologists I know never heard of the guy, so I don't know how important he was. I would put I don't know if I put a small wager on it or not. I imagine that Steven Pinker, as a psychologist, has always been more well-known than Nathaniel Branden, but that might be wrong because consider Nathaniel Branden's reign was in like the 60s, right? 50s and 60s. Pinker was probably in diapers then. Yes, he wasn't. He probably didn't even exist then. So maybe that's improper, but the height of Branden and the height of Pinker, I don't know. Maybe that's not right. Maybe Branden was more well known. He had an institute. Like that's got to be worth something. But okay, here's another one. The Ideas of Ayn Rand by Merrill. Have I looked at this? I don't think I've looked at this yet. I've actually been looking at. I did look at some bits of this. Yeah, I was looking at the epistemology parts, And I do remember that there was some snide comments in here, which was unacademic. And if I knew, I don't know who the author is, if Ronald Merrill is an academic or not, but if he was, then I would chastise him for his sometimes he makes rude and stupid comments, which are unnecessary. But otherwise, it's not too bad of a survey of her works. I don't know how well he compared it to other things. I think he probably does do that. I've got a few marks in here, so it was worth it. It's okay, but you just have to kind of remember what the source is and who the author is. And yeah. Okay, that's it for philosophy.